Hey everyone, Clay here. Just wanted to let you know I've got a new comic book out right now from Comixology Originals and Amazon. It's called Hard Style Juice. It's a professional wrestling murder mystery, so if you're into pro wrestling and comics and all that good stuff, you're going to want to check it out. And it's free to read if you have Amazon Prime. It's a digital-only comic. If you want to check it out, head over to hardstylejuice.com, and that'll direct you right to the page where you can check it out. That's hardstylejuice.com. Thanks, guys. Hello, welcome to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast where we talk about films off the Rotten Tomatoes 200 Best Horror Movies of All Time list. My name is Clay. With me, as always, is Amanda, and we are the things that were and shall be again. Amanda, how you doing?
I'm good, you flat-mouthed son of a bitch.
I was trying to come up with some sort of off-color way to bring up someone's in my fruit cellar, someone with a fresh soul as something that you would say to potential boyfriends, but I couldn't
Hey, baby,
think of
you want to come see the fresh soul in my fruit cellar?
We, of course, are talking about, this is episode 2 of our Summer Cabin series.
Yes.
And we are talking about Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn from 1987. It is number 77 on our list, with an 88% Rotten Tomatoes score and an 89% audience score. Had you seen this one before?
I have, but it's been a longer time than I thought, because watching this, I was like, wait a minute. Like, I don't remember 90% of this.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I think I conflated 1 and 2 quite a bit in my mind.
Well, there's easy to do.
Yes.
Because this is kind of like Evil Dead 1.5 to a certain extent.
It's a requel.
Yeah,
which is a term that horror movies think they only discovered a few years ago with Scream 5 or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But back when this came out, it was because they got more money and had a rights issue. So Evil Dead 2 is, for me, I can't remember the first time I saw it. I think I talked about in the last episode, I believe I watched these backwards, where I think I watched Army of Darkness first. I might have watched Evil Dead second, but I think I did Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 2, Evil Dead.
Interesting. And that wasn't confusing for you?
I mean, you know.
I guess no more so than watching them in order.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It all kind of makes sense, even if you do watch them in order. Yeah.
I remember watching this and being deeply confused because I thought it was just like a straight up sequel when I started. And then I was like, wait a minute. Why is he acting like he doesn't? Why are they going back to the cabin?
Yeah.
Why is he acting like he doesn't know what's going to happen? Why is he calling this woman Linda?
Well, when I was in high school, I had an art class, and I had been, and somehow, this came up in conversation, and I don't think I had seen Evil Dead 1 yet, and I had seen the second one, and I was like, oh yeah, I really want to see the first one. And my art teacher, who was a much older person, said, there actually isn't an Evil Dead 1. That's part of the joke. And I'm like, no, that's not true. There definitely is. But to watch this movie, you could be forgiven to think that it is kind of a joke, that it's just this first movie with the second title. But,
right.
But this movie is probably in my top 10 favorite movies, period.
Wow.
And probably top 5 favorite horror movies.
Wow.
Yes, I love Evil Dead 2.
All right. So does that mean I should belligerently act like I hate it just so we can fight?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to come back anymore, that's fine. But
one of these episodes, I'm going to push you to fire me.
I guess I'll know. We'll all know when you're ready to quit, I suppose. Is that the equivalent of quiet quitting? I guess it's the reverse, where you don't quit, but you just
it would be loud quitting,
belligerently. Yeah,
shit on everything you love.
Yeah. Well, don't stop now. We're gonna take a quick break, play the trailer, and then we're gonna talk about it.
"4 years ago, in this quiet forest, in this cozy cabin, something happened. Something so frightening. Something so deadly. Something so evil. We prayed it would never happen again. Now, from the creator of Evil Dead comes Evil Dead 2. Dead 2, Dead by Dawn.
Okay, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn from 1987, directed by Sam Raimi, written by Sam Raimi and Scott Spiegel, starring Bruce Campbell, Sarah Berry, Dan Hicks, Cassie Wesley, Richard Domier, Denise Bixler, and Ted Raimi as possessed Henrietta. Amanda, what happens in Evil Dead 2?
Ash Williams is once again battling horrifying demons at a secluded cabin in the woods. After discovering an audio tape left by a college professor that contains voices reading from the Book of the Dead, Ash's girlfriend Linda becomes possessed by evil spirits that are awakened by the voices on the tape. Ash soon discovers there is no escaping the woods.
All right. I think one of the things that watching these movies again is bringing out to me is that I think I need to become an Ash apologist because I feel like the perception of Ash is like, man, he's just a big old dummy, just constantly reading from the book, constantly bringing. It's not his fault. It's not his fault in the first one. It's not his fault in the second one. It's the professor's fault.
I mean, he does just. Anyway, we'll get into it.
Who tells him to play? I know you're going to say, who tells him to play the tape?
Well, what I was going to say is, aren't they illegally at a house that he just decided to take his girlfriend to?
Unclear.
Okay, all right. We'll get into Ash. Mm-hmm. But first, Clay, some things you'll find in the Evil Dead 2. Mm-hmm. Upgraded Ash, upgraded Linda, upgraded cabin, upgraded tape deck, upgraded tree attack, upgraded timeline.
Yes. Yep.
Bruce Campbell getting sprayed with even more fluids.
Yeah, they apparently they tried to use different colors in an attempt to not get an X rating.
Yeah.
Which is why sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's green.
Green, yeah. That actually I get it now.
It didn't work.
Work shed.
Yes. So after he gets his hand bitten, before he runs into the work shed to look for the chainsaw, there's this weird ADR where he kind of turns to the camera and just goes, "Work shed." And this is one of those cult movies where people watch it a million times and they kind of key into specific things that they find interesting and funny. And one of those people apparently is Kurt Russell.
Oh.
And so when they were making Escape from L.A., which is Bruce Campbell is in that. Oh. Apparently the very first thing Kurt Russell said to him is he walked up to him and he said, "Say work shed."
I love it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Ghost Dad.
Ghost Dad, yes.
But not that Ghost Dad.
Despite what happens in this movie, the less problematic Ghost Dad.
Yeah,
yes.
the less problematic of the Ghost Dads. Return of the Ominous Deer, or the satanic version of that George Harrison music video.
Yes. Yeah. The ominous deer from the first one is back. And this time he's brought friends.
Yes. And they all like to laugh.
And they all like to laugh and dance. Just have a great time.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Excellent.
And last but certainly not least, Ted Raimi's Ear Sweat.
Ted Raimi's Ear Sweat. The Henrietta suit.
Sweet
Henrietta.
Sweet Henrietta.
Was, as it looks, a head-to-toe latex bodysuit that was incredibly hot. And there is a scene at the end when Henrietta she's up in the air and she's grabbed onto Annie.
Yes.
And it's when Ash comes out of the cellar and he whistles and they turn. When Ted Raimi turns his head, a big rivulet of white fluid just pours out of his ear.
Oh.
And he said that was sweat that had been building up inside of the latex suit. And by that point in the movie too, if you look close enough, it's falling apart. Like the ass is totally like ripped open.
Yeah,
because they only had one.
Oh my God.
So
silly me to assume that all the fluids in this movie were effects.
Nope, not that one.
Not that one.
So yes, Evil Dead 2. I think I would be interested to know how confusing this was for people who saw the first one at the time and then went to see the second one. It was a different time when I feel like you could get away with this stuff easier because there is a considerable gap between the first two. The first one's 81. This is 7 years later.
Okay.
Or 6 years later.
Yeah.
But still, it is kind of confusing because the first 10 minutes of this movie are a recap of the first movie.
Right.
But it's not like they're just playing clips. They completely reshot it.
Right. They've kind of stripped it down, too.
Yes.
Like it's down to just Ash and Linda getting to the cabin, and then it dives straight in to, like, play the tape. She's possessed. He has to kill her. Buries her in the outside. She torments him.
Yep.
All right, now let's move on.
Yep. There is a point where supposedly, I don't think it completely lines up because of various things that happen in this movie, but you can cut the 3 movies together into one long movie because the last shot of Evil Dead is the thing going through the house and going up to Ash.
Yeah.
And they do that same thing here. And basically that's the idea. That's where Evil Dead 2 starts, is when he starts flying and spinning and then he hits the tree and then he turns into the monster, but then the sun comes out.
Yeah.
So technically, the idea that they've said is you could cut it together and it would be one movie, even though that doesn't entirely make sense because the rest of Evil Dead 2 is kind of, anyway.
I can kind of see it, but yeah.
Yeah, so the claim, what they say is the reason that they did that was because of rights issues with the first one. I kind of don't entirely buy that.
Yeah, that's confusing because you would think they then would have to name the movie something different.
Yeah, that stuff is. I think it's. I don't know if that's true because I think there's probably a difference between who owns the name and who owns the actual footage and stuff like that.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
And since this was produced by Dino De Laurentiis, which the first one was not, Dino always, man, he was doing interesting stuff.
Fucking
in the 80s.
love Dino.
I think there very well could have been a problem getting the footage for the first movie. It might have been something as easy as because of how many people ended up, there's a lot of people who ended up putting money towards the first one who still to this day get checks. Bruce Campbell's parents, who gave him $50,000, still get checks.
Goddamn.
And so it might have been a case where Dino De Laurentiis was like, we're not paying these people.
Yeah, let's just start again.
But I also think, I don't know, I think this feels like a very different movie. Like it's 6 years later.
Yeah.
Sam Raimi has learned a lot, I would assume. I mean, it clearly seems like he's got a much bigger budget.
Yep.
And I don't know. I think
Bruce Campbell's more cheekbones and jaw than ever before.
Bruce Campbell worked out quite a bit.
Yeah.
But this one, it almost feels like they're like, okay,
Yeah.
Evil Dead was kind of a rough draft.
Yeah, yeah.
We've got some money. Let's just pretend that the first
Right,
one doesn't
right.
exist, and
Yeah.
we'll just
We
go from there.
built the house with these blueprints. Now let's renovate it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I buy it.
Yeah. How do you feel about the new beginning?
I don't.
It is very confused. Like one of the things that's very confusing is
Yeah.
if you are a fan of the first one and you go into this one, the first thing you ask is, what the fuck is Ash doing?
Yeah, yeah.
Why would he bring another girl to the same cabin?
I've got to say, I'm a fan of the first one. I really like the first one.
Yep.
And I think because I really like the first one, at least at the beginning of this one, I like it less.
Sure.
Because I feel like it's just doing what the first one did, but worse. In terms of like storytelling and like building things and building characters and suspense.
'Cause they hustle through
Right,
it.
right.
Yeah.
Because they are just kind of trying to get through it so they can get to the new stuff.
Yeah.
And I understand it. Like I get it has this sort of weird backstory to it, but it does make it a harder movie for me to get into initially. Because at first I'm a little bit like, even though I feel like this is a version of Ash that has become more of the like pop culture accepted version of him, I still like, I've seen the first one more, so I think of the first one more. So when I watch this one, I'm a little bit like, I don't know, like why do it so similar? If you're just gonna kind of wipe the slate clean, why not just change it a little bit?
And you have not seen Army of
I
Darkness?
have not.
That's okay. That's really interesting because you might be the only person I know who is Evil Dead literate.
Yeah.
Who, when they think of Evil Dead and Ash, they think of Ash from the first
Yes.
one and not Ash with a chainsaw in his hand.
I don't know. What can I say? It's like that was the one that I saw the first and the most.
Sure. Yeah.
Like even streaming the Evil Dead 2 for this episode, like it was hard to find
Yeah. Where did you end up watching it?
on some Amazon Prime channel that I had to get a free 7-day trial.
Oh, really?
Of. Yeah.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
No, it's totally okay because
If I had thought to do it, I would have brought the DVD for you yesterday, but I forgot.
it completely worked out. But it was just weird because I assumed it would be on one of the very numerous streaming channels I already pay for and have, or at least on like Tubi or something, or pay to rent it for $3 on Prime.
So you couldn't even pay to rent it?
No.
Really?
Yeah, so it's just like hard to find.
Because the first one you watched on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Huh.
Yeah. I feel like this one, and I feel like I've had that problem in the past.
Yeah.
Where like if you haven't bought yourself a physical copy, you might want to watch this movie and look around on the internet for it and just be shit out of luck.
I find that interesting because the Evil Dead franchise is one that is almost impossible not to accidentally bump into a physical copy of it. Like there are people who just fix wobbly table legs by stacking up old copies of Evil Dead that they have.
Are there people who do that, or are there people named Clay who do that?
Listen. Yes.
That's it.
I'm just using an example that's
Relatable,
but not necessarily autobiographical. If it were, I wouldn't tell you about it.
What do they call it now? Autofiction?
Is that a thing?
Yes.
Writers, don't put yourself into stories. Nobody cares. Write what you know doesn't mean write your childhood.
Well, for some people it does.
Some people it does.
Unless you have an exceptional childhood or you're a really good nonfiction writer. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? You could end up the VP nominee for the United States.
Okay. Moving on. This movie is kind of weird for me because it does have that weird fast-forward-y feeling. And then you're sort of thrown in, and there are these other characters who seem extremely separate.
Yeah.
Like, initially, I thought that the professor and the wife and the daughter, Annie, all died. And so the first time Annie is shown, like, getting out of a car or getting off a plane, however she first arrives on the scene with her very milquetoast boyfriend whose name I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Ed. I was like, is this a flashback? Like, I didn't it took me a while to figure out, like like chronologically, where is everyone? And then when they all showed up at the cabin, I was like, oh, so this is simultaneous.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. But I actually did like it more. I like this movie more once the other people arrive.
Okay, interesting. Because I was going to say my favorite parts. Well, I think it's different than the first one because my favorite parts are still the parts when it's just Bruce Campbell. Because this one is clearly like they know what the money is.
Yeah.
And the money is Bruce Campbell by himself losing his mind, getting the shit beat out of him.
I do. So I like those parts, and I think he is hilarious in them. But I feel like this movie feels like a weird exercise to me until I'm like, oh, they've introduced new aspects.
Sure.
Like
yeah.
I kind of need that to happen in order for this movie to feel like justified, I guess.
If you're coming off of the first one, definitely.
Right,
because so much of the second half of the first one is Bruce Campbell by himself.
Right.
But even that stuff is upgraded here.
Yes.
Like they do some gags that they did in the first one, but just like the mirror gag.
I love the mirror gag.
The mirror gag is great.
The mirror gag is so good, especially where he like reaches out to touch it and you kind of think it's going to do the thing from the first one and it doesn't. He just touches it.
Yeah. But while I think that the stuff with Bruce Campbell by himself is great, I think when the people show up, I think that stuff works better than all of the stuff with the friends from the first one.
Yeah.
As much as that stuff I don't really have a problem with.
Yeah.
This one, I think the acting is better.
Yes.
And just the storyline is better because everybody kind of has a thing that they're after.
Yep.
And so...
Yeah, and everybody's kind of like... At least the men are less of a dick. This
time,
well, there's
one
not
of
like...
them is.
Well...
What's his name? Shit, what the hell's his name?
I don't know anybody's name in this movie other than Annie.
I know the
and
actor's
Ash.
name, but I don't know the character's name. His name is Jake. Not in a million years.
It's Jake and Bobby Joe.
I know Bobby Joe.
Yeah,
of course,
yeah.
Because he screams it a million times
all the time. But like in the Evil Dead, Scotty is such a douchebag.
Yeah.
That it's kind of refreshing in this that Jake is just like, no, a man doesn't leave his woman behind or whatever he says.
Yeah. There's a bit more of like Night of the Living Dead in this one, where in the last one it's kind of just mayhem and nobody really has everybody's kind of expendable until there's one person left. But in this one, everybody kind of, they're all engaged with the situation.
Right.
And there is tension between the people as to what to do.
Right.
Bobby Joe wants to leave. Jake wants to find her. Annie wants to find out what happened to her parents.
Yep.
Ash just wants to burn the place down and leave.
Right.
And not get eaten alive. So like the dynamic is a lot better in this one.
And having them be mostly strangers. Or sort of like there's the two couples that don't know each other until they meet on the path to the cabin, and then there's Ash, and so you have this like natural tension of just like, I don't know you,
right?
Why should I trust you? Why should I do what you say? As opposed to with the kind of more stereotypical like friend group where people have these pre-developed relationships that you would think make them more likely to sort of hesitate when they're like fighting or doing different things. Like they don't want to, they're sort of like, there's weird dynamics that they can't always break out of quickly.
Yeah.
And so it can make you frustrated watching them where you're like, why do you keep sending the women to bed? Like this is a weird thing to do. Or like, you're just going to fucking leave your girlfriend. That doesn't feel super believable.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, it kind of creates a natural and very believable tension.
Yeah.
That sometimes people would just be like, look, like my loyalty is to this one person in this scenario that I actually know and care about.
And it also does something that I feel like is still pretty unique in horror movies, which is brings a second set of characters into the situation after the situation has already started.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons I love the beginning when it's just Ash is because he has enough time to lose his mind. And then they show up. And Annie's like, this is my family's cabin.
Right.
There's a psychopath in here.
Right, covered in blood.
Yeah.
Who just shot at us through the door.
Yeah, and he's trying to explain that there's monster like that. And that's a dynamic you don't usually get. Like you never get one person running from Jason Voorhees,
right,
who lures Jason to the next town over, and they're like, "What's going on here?"
Or even it's actually even kind of the reverse, where it's like one person getting chased by Jason Voorhees, and then some out of nowhere, some group shows up at Camp Crystal Lake.
That would actually have been a great Friday the 13th movie.
If
it was a one-on-one for 20 minutes.
Right, and then all of a sudden you're just like, who the fuck are you people? And
that would have been
what
good.
are you doing here?
Yeah, that's a pretty good idea.
But
I might steal that.
But that's part of why this movie works for me when the new blood shows up, because it has that same quality of just kind of like, this has been going on, and then they just walk into it.
Yeah.
Like completely unawares, and Ash, who we know at this point is definitely the protagonist, is like he's losing his mind. He's also lightly gotten the shit kicked out of him by Jake, and so he can't explain to them. Even if he tried to, even if he did manage to explain, it would sound insane. But he's also just so mentally and physically already worn down that he can't get it out.
Right, because he's been kicked in the face and they throw him in the cellar. And,
with sweet Henrietta.
Which is, Bruce Campbell is a comedic genius. Sam Raimi is also a comedic genius, and the two of them together is just gold every time. Yeah. But when they throw him in the cellar and then they play the tape, and they say, "I buried her in the earth and fruit cellar," when she comes up, that scream that he lets out, excellent stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I think what they managed to do in this that a lot of sequels tend not to be able to do is they figured out how to do more of the same but not repeat themselves, really. Minus the stuff at the beginning.
Yeah.
But even there, they've got Linda doing a headless ballet dance.
Yes.
And they've got all the stuff. They kind of zero in on that stuff and do a little bit more with that where, and she bites his hand.
Right. Her decapitated head mocking him. Yeah.
And so the thing that I noticed this time is they don't even really mention the basement until they throw him down there.
Yeah.
Where it's such a key part of the first movie.
Right.
Everything they do in that house is other parts of the house for the most part.
Yep.
And
they spend there's a whole sequence where he's like running through the house like it's a labyrinth.
Yes, I love that sequence because he manages to fake out the demon.
Yeah.
and hide. Oh, that's the first time when he hides.
Right.
In the
He
thing.
hides in it. Yeah.
But then I love when the first person demon camera comes back into the room and then looks to the left.
Yeah.
And then looks to the right and then just kind of goes
all the way around and then
and then just leaves in shame.
There's some really fun demon POV stuff in this movie.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that they change very clearly is the level of comedy in this is much more dialed up.
Yes.
It is, if it wasn't for the content or subject matter rather, this would be a Warner Brothers cartoon.
Yeah. There's definitely like a slapstick comedy aspect to a lot of it, especially the Bruce Campbell stuff.
It's weird because it's like, I think there's such a fine line with that stuff where it becomes it can become cartoonish in a very unappealing way. Like there's no point where he's like trying to run, but his feet are, like they're doing the Scooby-Doo thing. And it never feels like a parody or like a satire send-up. It's just they're infusing a little bit of Three Stooges into it as they go through it. So like everything with his hand, Bruce Campbell might be the best hand actor I've ever seen, because he, like, whether or not he's fighting off his own hand still connected to him or it's dragging him in.
That I love that when it drags him across the floor.
Yes.
I find that fucking hysterical.
But they go into the kitchen and they just start smashing plates over his head. It's insane.
I like when he stabs his own hand and then has the chainsaw and keeps saying to the hand, "Who's laughing now?" as he screams and gets covered in his own blood while he cuts it off.
Yeah. But the scene in the kitchen with the plates.
Yeah.
They do that in Roger Rabbit the next year.
Yeah.
When Roger's at the bar and he's just smashing stuff over his head. So it's like it's very cartoonish.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, the tone that they set up in this of insanity, literal insanity, not just like, hyperbolic insanity, but it's everything that's happening is so literally insane that it all works.
Yeah. I really, I find a lot of horror comedy stuff falls on the wrong side of things for me. Like there aren't a ton of horror comedies that I really like. And this one works for me.
Yeah.
Like the type of comedy and the tone they hit. And I think the fact that like there's definitely like audio aspects to it. Like when the basement vomits up a shit ton of blood and kind of like gurgles at the end of it. Like there are definitely some funny like sound cues in it.
There's one at the end with the giant head. And it has the smaller heads in it.
Yeah.
And one of the heads pops out and starts jiggling.
Yeah.
They use a cartoon sound effect that's like underneath, like it's underneath.
Right, right. But they never do. Oh my God, what movie were we watching not too long ago? Was it Slither? When
Probably.
The cops come out and it's this sort of like dopey Keystone Cop music.
Yes, I think so.
Like this movie never goes into that.
Right.
Like even if there are funny sound effects and like moments like that, the soundtrack never.
Yeah, you
like,
don't get
sinks into like the I don't know.
You don't get like a banjo cue when Jake and Bobby Joe show up.
Right, exactly. And I think that's part of what makes it work for me is that it knows that like to stay in keeping with the tone of the rest of the movie, it can't do stuff like that, but it also doesn't need to.
Yeah.
Like that would be hitting it too hard. Whereas leaving it the way they do is like funny enough. You don't need the like overwrought like music cue to tell people like now's when you should laugh. It's like no, you just find yourself laughing when Ash is smashing plates over his own head.
Or one of my favorite moments where he comes back after he's been possessed in the morning and he gets back to the cabin and he looks at the cabin and it turns into a giant pair of eyes and says join us.
Yes.
And then he's like looking around and then they cut to the car and they do a quick
zooming out
quick head turn and then cut to the car. It's perfect.
Yeah, and it just doesn't. You just laugh when you see it because that's your natural reaction, not because something has cued you to do it.
Yes. Yeah. I find that some of my favorite comedies, and maybe this is me overcompensating for being an idiot, I don't know. But some of my favorite comedies.
Wow, are you okay?
Well,
How
much time you got? Some of my favorite comedies are the ones that I didn't get the joke the first time through. So like this one, I remember the first time I watched this, I'm pretty sure I saw Evil Dead 1 before I saw this.
Okay.
Because I remember watching this and being prepared for horror. And so I wasn't prepared for the silliness of it.
Yeah.
And so that stuff didn't really land with me. Or if it did, I didn't realize it was part of a larger trend.
Right, that it was on purpose.
Yeah. For instance, like the first time I watched Wet Hot American Summer, I like did not get the joke. And I watched that whole movie and I was like, this is really fucking stupid. And then I watched it again and I went, this might be the best movie I've ever seen. Because I got it. Everything clicked in.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something about figuring it out that makes it that much more appealing. But this was definitely one where I was not ready for how silly it is.
Yeah, I definitely remember having that experience too. And I think that coupled with the, like not going into it, not fully realizing that it was going to start with this sort of retelling of the first one threw me off the first time I saw this. And I was a little bit like, oh. And I think that's part of why I didn't go on to watch Army of Darkness is because I was kind of like, maybe this franchise isn't for me.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until much later that I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be kind of over the top and a little ridiculous at times.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Especially when you get to Army of Darkness. Which, surprisingly, I bet nobody realized this was going to happen in 1987, but pretty cleanly picks up from the end of Evil Dead 2.
Okay.
So that'll be... Do you have any idea what happens in Army of Darkness?
No.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm so excited for you to
this
love.
This is my gift to you.
Oh, I'm so excited for you to love or hate this movie. I can't see you hating it. I hope you love it. And if not,
I'm fired.
I don't listen. There's a difference between getting fired and offering your resignation.
I see you would let me leave with dignity.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. The nicest thing you've ever said to me.
What was I saying before that?
How much you love this movie.
Yes. Yeah, it's I where am I trying to go? Okay. Talk about Ash a little bit.
Sure.
This is
that beautiful idiot.
I was surprised. I have such a complete idea of this Ash character from that is mostly from Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, and the TV show later.
Sure.
I mean, mostly Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. That's like Ash is those two movies. So every time I watch the first one, it is so strange to see Ash as he exists in that movie.
Yeah.
Here, he is so far removed from the first one.
Yep.
It's another instance where I wouldn't blame anybody who didn't realize that there was another movie.
Yeah.
Because he is not the same character.
No, he's so different. And that's yet another thing that I think if you're coming off of the first one and going straight into this one, that can feel kind of jarring.
Yeah.
Is because he is kind of this quiet, like a little goofy, kind of sweet, like more introverted character in the first one. And then in this one, he is like a giant goofball.
He's a Bruce Campbell character.
He's a Bruce Campbell character. He's like a giant goofball, but he's very like charismatic and has this like big personality right away.
Yeah.
And it's sort of weird. It's weird to sort of go from Ash in the first one to Ash in this one and like recognize that there's definitely a divide there. Like it's almost not even like the evolution of the same character. It's almost like a totally different character,
which I kind of like.
Yeah,
because I think so I had mentioned in the last episode that another podcast that I listened to called Blank Check was comparing the Evil Dead movies to the Mad Max movies in being very kind of similar trilogies. What were trilogies at the time, because they kind of play fast and loose with their own continuity and they have their characters that serve the story they're telling, not necessarily, they're not bound to anything.
Right.
So Max in Mad Max, very different from Max in Road Warrior. More or less the same in Thunderdome. But here it's a similar thing where it's Ash serves his purpose in the first one as the wallflower beta of the group.
Yes.
And here they need him to be front and center.
Right.
And so they create that character that he is more of a leading man character and more of a, when he starts fighting back, it seems like less of a leap.
Yeah.
He's not Rambo.
Not until the end.
Not until the end. But like then there's no point, like we just watched for Real Ripe and Real Rotten, which is the other movie show that Wes and I do. We're covering the best and worst of you were on that show.
I was on that show.
I said that for the audience.
Yeah, that's what I was. That's why I didn't speak up. I was trying to give you some cover.
Not
but
because I forgot
you don't have
were
to
on the
take
show.
it. It's fine.
that was like 6 years ago. It was before we started this. But we were doing Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Ah, right.
The best being Terminator, and the worst being a movie I was very excited to talk about, which is End of Days.
Oh,
have you ever seen End of Days?
1 million years ago. Yes.
Yeah. It's an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
I kind of love it.
Where he has to fight the literal devil.
I kind of love it.
It's so bad.
I know.
But there's like something, I do think that there's something kind of charming about how insane it is.
Yes, yeah.
But it's just like this thing where it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie at the height, just past the height of his powers.
Yes.
But where an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie has very specific things in it, which are gigantic guns.
Yep.
And Arnold Schwarzenegger more or less being the same character.
Yeah.
But the character he plays in that movie is supposed to be like a down on his luck everyman.
Yes.
Who has to fight the literal devil. And there's still a scene in this movie where he puts a bunch of guns and shit on him like he's going to fight the Terminator.
Yeah.
And it's I don't really know where I was going with that. But
he's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's got to do it.
Yeah.
But like Ash doesn't really have that level.
No,
Yeah.
he and Bruce Campbell is not. I mean, he's in great shape in this, but
Yes.
you don't look at him in this and go, "Oh, action star. This guy's gonna fuck some stuff up." And I think they do a pretty good job of even kind of obfuscating that a little bit by having him get possessed towards the end of the movie. Because I think you could probably, if you don't know anything about these movies, there's a possibility that you could think, "Oh shit, he's done."
Right.
Now Annie's the final girl.
Annie's the main character, and this is going to become a more traditional horror movie in the sense that there's a final girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think Ash in this is the thing that will tip you off right away that he is a different character is how quickly he is willing to behead Linda and bury her body and put her.
He does get there pretty quick.
He gets there real fast, and I know it's partially because they're trying to move quickly through that sort of introductory material from the first movie. But it is still, when you're keeping the first one in mind and then you're watching this one, it's shocking because in the first one he's so reluctant to take any violent action. Even when Linda is fully possessed, he still doesn't want to hurt her. Even when Scott's getting attacked, he just kind of stands back frozen and can't do anything. In this movie, it's less than 15 minutes into the movie when he has decapitated Linda and buried her body outside.
Yep.
Like he gets right to it.
Yeah.
Real fast.
Yeah.
Work shed.
Kind of feels like it's not the first time he's done this.
Exactly. And it feels like he's much more primed for, like, I will resort to violence to defend myself.
Isn't it kind of... Do you find it... I feel like anytime I do that, I feel like I'm turning into Jiminy Glick. Why the demons? Do you find it strange that... So, okay. I feel like the line of delineation between Evil Dead 2 as a straight up goofball movie and Evil Dead 2 as it exists now is the fact that they kind of just start from zero. Because I think the other way you go with this is it's not Linda, but it is Ash going back to the same cabin. And then the rest of the movie, he's like, yeah, I kind of have some experience with this. Right. It was kind of dumb for me.
Yeah,
that's
I thought
when it gets
that was
too
over,
goofy.
and I thought, like, that wouldn't happen twice.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of thing they would have him do now.
Yes.
Yeah. But
just, like, needing, like, having met another beautiful woman and being like, oh shit, I don't have an apartment right now, I gotta bring this lady back somewhere.
That's a total Ash move now.
Yes.
Like, did you watch the show at all?
Yeah, like the first season or so.
The pilot of the first episode, how they get things going is he pulls out the Necronomicon to impress a girl.
Yes. Yes.
Which is
right.
But it's a little surprising that they don't do that here.
Yeah, I feel like they're just not fully there yet with his character.
Right. But I think then it would turn into more of a parody where it'd be like, well, I guess I got to chop up another girl for, that kind of thing.
Right.
And that's what I think saves it from going too far over the line is that they're kind of starting from zero.
Right. So he's sort of an innocent in this situation, just like everybody else. Yeah. Where like, so I still don't fully understand. I think that he just kind of like hears from someone about this cabin and like is told, hey, it's empty. You can bring your girlfriend there. The people who own it aren't around. I don't get the vibe that he's there legitimately.
Correct. Yes.
Like if Annie is showing up expecting to find her elderly parents there, and then it's not like Ash rented this cabin for a long weekend. He just sort of gets a tip that like, hey, you can bring her to this romantic getaway and like have a fun weekend.
Like we said in the last one, who did they rent the cabin from?
Right.
It's nothing. It's never come up.
Right.
I mean, it's never come up because it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But it is one of those weird things where they're driving and it's like, Ash, what kind of place is this? Like, well, it's a little run down, but it's nice.
But it's right up in the mountain.
Yeah. How does he know about the cabin?
Yeah.
It's clearly owned by these other people. Is this like a timeshare situation? And Yeah, why are they going there? How do they know there's nobody there?
I mean, I think the why they're going there is kind of easily answered.
Oh,
you know?
yes.
Yeah, but all the other questions. It's not like you said. It's not like it matters. So it's fine. But it is kind of funny to think that like, yeah, in this movie it kind of works because he clearly is just doing like a dumb young guy thing where he's like trying to impress his girlfriend. And he's going to take her away for the weekend on a romantic getaway.
To a really lovely cabin.
Yes.
Very impressive looking place.
But he doesn't know that. And he's just sort of like, yeah, it'll all work out. She'll love it. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Like, and that makes what when the rest of this movie starts to happen, you're not like, you don't think exceptionally like, what a dumbass.
Yeah.
You know, like if he had known, oh, this is like an evil haunted cabin with an evil book and it looks like hell, and he still brought her there, it would be really easy to just be like, ugh, okay. Yeah. Like, so he's an idiot.
And I do have to, when I said I was an Ash apologist, in the first two movies, it's not his fault. In the next one, kind of his fault.
Okay.
That's all I'll say.
Fair enough.
What do you think of the new characters? What do you think about Annie and Ed and Jake and Bobby Joe?
I kind of love Jake and Bobby Joe. I love that they're just like these hillbillies like hanging out in the road for some reason. Like
like highwaymen.
Yeah, I don't really get what they were doing there. I love that Bobby Joe is like a total hottie and Jake is kind of a stereotype and she's still just like, no, that's my man. It's like, good for you guys. And I love that she's sort of a stone cold bitch to Annie when they first meet. I don't know. They're funny characters because they're caricatures, but they're very endearing.
Yes,
in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think Annie's boyfriend, whose name I refuse to learn, is completely superfluous. Other than having an extra body and having somebody to transform into a demon, I don't know why he's there.
Yep.
I like Annie. I kind of expected her to be evil.
Sure.
I kind of wanted her to be evil in the end.
Sure.
Sort of wanted it to be like the family wants the demons to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I liked her. I like that she's sort of she's not just the like damsel in distress type. And in the context of like the family, like her dad being the professor, it's clear that she's like taken on his research and she's going out and doing field work and like kind of excitedly reporting back to him. And I think that's kind of a fun way to play it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the larger kind of lore stuff that they add as far as the Castle Kandar and finding the pages and all this kind of stuff?
I mean, I think a lot of that's a little superfluous.
Yeah.
I think it would have been enough to have her just sort of be like, I'm coming home to see my parents. I want to hear what my dad has discovered about, you know, or even if she had, I don't know. It's sort of like, I get, part of me wants Annie to be able to have some agency in the movie where like having her be the one who found the pages and brings them to the cabin makes her very important to the plot. But some of the bigger lore stuff I kind of don't really. Yeah. I don't know. Just doesn't feel necessary if you've already got the Necronomicon.
Right. Well, I think a lot of that stuff is there. To expand it out a little bit because I don't think they go too deep, which is nice.
Yeah, that's true.
And they don't do it just for the sake of doing it. They're doing it to set up the ending.
Yeah.
You know, because once they pull back to that shot where he's standing in front of the castle.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh shit, all right, I get it. I get what happened here.
Right. Yeah. I'm one of the questions I've always wondered. I'm sure there's an answer out there somewhere. Is why they change in the opening little bit about the book.
I love it.
It's the Necronomicon Ex Mortis.
Yes.
Which someone once told me is actually translated Book of the Dead of the Dead.
Yes.
But in the actual body of the movie, they still call it Naturum Demontem, which is what they call it the first one. So I don't know where the change came over, because after this it's only referred to as the Necronomicon.
I think somebody got really into Lovecraft.
obviously that's where the name comes from, but I've always been curious about why the change. I don't know if it's they drop the ex mortis, I think, for the most part after this one.
Right. So rather than it being an ATM machine,
yes,
it's just a ATM.
I can't remember what they call it in the show. They might call it Naturam Demontum in the show.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Because I know there's some weird thing. Again, there's a weird rights thing with the show where the only stuff they can reference is, I think, the first two movies. They can't reference anything from Army of Darkness in the show. It's really weird. This is one of those classic franchises where it was made by 3 different companies, and so the rights are just
You've got a Friday the 13th type situation.
Yeah. But yeah, I've always wondered why the change. Yeah. I love the updated book.
Yeah.
I think this design
looks really good.
Looks really good, much more fitting for what it's supposed to be. The pages inside look fantastic.
Yep.
They're a little bit more than the colored pencil drawings from the first one.
Right. Where it's just like somebody's sketchbook.
Yeah, as fun as that one is, that's like the travel Necronomicon that you keep in your breast pocket.
Yeah.
So you always have it with you.
As opposed to your full King James Necronomicon that has like color illustrations.
Right next to your pocket Constitution.
Yep. What do you think about the demon makeup?
Interesting change. Well, obviously the first one is very kind of homemade.
Yeah.
This one, the makeup team on this one were at least 2 of the guys who went on to form K&B Effects, who are probably the most prolific and well-known makeup effects team through the 80s. Well, mostly through the 90s, because I think this is 87. Yeah, so they kind of come to prominence late 80s and through the 90s.
Yeah.
Greg Nicotero, who is the N from K&B, is the guy who does all the makeup for The Walking Dead.
Yep.
So these guys are really established. I like, and also Mark Sjostrom does a lot of stuff on this too. I think the K&B guys were working with him.
Okay.
Mark Sjostrom was the main guy. He's done a bunch of other stuff. He did, I think he did Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3.
Oh, okay.
So all these.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know he designed the weird little dead baby from Nightmare Part 3. So I think he worked on that one. But I think the makeup works really well in this. I do think that the K&B definitely has a look.
Yeah.
That they kind of always do.
Yeah.
That I don't super love.
Same.
It's always very ocular cavity heavy.
Yes.
And it always
lots of furrows in the face.
Yeah, and it always makes for really big heads. Yeah. And I mean, they're great at what they do. They do amazing work, but there's just something about that style that I think works really well here. I don't know if it works great everywhere.
It starts to you lose the human face a little too much sometimes. I think Ash's makeup when he's possessed looks great.
Yes.
Because it still looks like Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
I think some of the other ones they do, they're cool in theory, but then you lose so much of the person's face. And so they stop reading visually as a monstrous human face just become something totally different and cool looking and grotesque, but it loses some of that that visceral connection to me. I really like actually the home done makeup in the first one.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is, and part of the reason it works is that these people are all friends. And when you look at them, there's something deeply wrong with them when they're possessed, but they still look like your friend or your loved one. And I think that's why in this movie, Linda's makeup is one of my favorites because it still looks like her.
Yeah. It's that makeup is kind of a slicker version of the one from the first one. Where it's got that sort of...
her teeth are sharp and grotesque and her eyes, she's got the white contacts and she's kind of decaying a little bit and like fucked up looking.
But it still has that sort of like porcelain doll look to it.
Yeah, and it's still very much her face. Whereas like Sweet Henrietta and the boyfriend whose name I don't care about, like his face like becomes something completely different.
Yeah,
it's not a human face really at all anymore, except that it has a mouth and 2 eyes.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of cool looking monster makeup and effects in this, but there's no moment that made me have the same feeling I did in the first one when Ash has dragged Linda outside and Linda is in the nightgown like writhing on the dirt and she kind of is twisted back towards the light and the light hits her face. Yeah. And it's this great image where she still looks like a human form, but she looks disturbing.
Yep.
And like that looks a lot scarier to me than any of the makeup in this.
Yeah, there's a lot more spectacle.
Yes.
Here.
Yes.
The one shot in this movie that I've never liked is when they cut to, and I guess it's just a setup for another shot they do later, but the scene of the car driving over the bridge, that's like a wide shot that is so clearly a model.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why spend the money on that? Because it's, it worked so well in the first one. I guess they're doing it to set up that shot later where the bridge has been destroyed.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. It just seems like you're doing a bigger shot there for the sake of doing a bigger shot. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like they do that a lot in this where I think some places better than others. The redesigned book looks great.
Yeah.
The dagger looks fantastic.
Yes.
Where the blade is now like a spinal column, which is very cool.
Yeah.
But eventually, this definitely veers away from possessed friends into monster movie by the end.
Right. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just think for me in the first movie, I find the makeup in the first movie scarier, whereas this one is obviously more like polished and a better spectacle, especially as things go bigger.
Yeah.
And I find the use of like stop motion, like kind of claymation people in these movies so interesting.
Yeah.
Like I understand why hypothetically they would be doing it, but it's still like tonally is such a weird shift when it's like Demon Linda's dancing corpse, but it's very clearly like a puppet or something. It's sort of a weird like,
That one I've always found distracting because the head on that puppet looks nothing like Linda.
Yeah.
It looks like they just took it off of Barbie or something.
It does.
Like the hair is a completely different color.
Right. It's so mismatched from her. Yeah.
How do you feel about the ending, which starts with the arrival of Ash's final form, chainsaw on hand, shotgun in holster?
Yeah, his action hero moments where he gets all suited up and she straps all the belts on him. I think the ending is, it's a very weird ending to this movie, to any movie, and I both like it and am like always just kind of walk away from it going, huh, like okay,
yeah.
I think the final fight with Henrietta is really fun. I think them kind of going back and forth and the crazy stretched out monster head that she gets is really fun. Everybody gets grabbed by the face.
Yes.
A lot
in the
face last grabbing. Like 20 minutes of this movie. Just lots of grabbing on the face.
Oh, we completely forgot about when Annie stabs Jake. That sequence is so funny.
Yeah, where she just like cannot understand that his body is in the doorway still.
Yeah, and then she's dragging him down the hallway and he's screaming in pain and she's going, like, shut up! Yeah. Shut up!
He's going, I can't breathe. And she goes, I'm trying.
And then, of course, he gets turned into a geyser of blood, which is very satisfying. But
I think it's like, I think they do the sort of suspense well of that you need Annie to read the last passages.
Yeah.
But she's gotten stabbed and Ash is trying to fend off this huge, like the tree monsters have really leveled up in this and are just fully punching through the house. I think all of that stuff is fun. I still don't fully understand how he ends up in the past.
she opens a portal and it sucks them to the past.
Thought it was supposed to suck them back to hell.
I don't know. Who's to say?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was prophesized that the man from the sky would free us from the Deadites.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I don't think anybody could have guessed that's where this movie was going.
Yeah, no, I did not have the first time I watched this movie, I did not have time travel.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've always enjoyed. I love the final sequence. The giant. I really like the giant head monster.
Yes.
And when the trees kind of turn to hands that are
Yeah,
coming down. I think
yeah.
that stuff is really well done. It's obviously done in a kind of old fashioned stop motion thing, but I've always loved when it comes through the door and Ash is so scared his hair turns white.
Yeah. Also, Ash crashes through a lot of doors in this movie.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, he broke all the bookcases in the last one, so he has to go through the doors.
Only the doors.
That's when he's at the beginning when he's running through the house.
Yeah, he's just like
he just
literally
dives
running through the
door.
doors.
Yeah, it's excellent. And like that stuff is funny on its own,
Right.
but they don't bring a lot of attention to it.
That's-
It's just like
yeah.
he's running through the door like a Looney Tune.
Right, like if you're kind of not fully paying attention to the movie when that happens, you wouldn't notice it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, because it just happens and then he just keeps going because
Yeah.
he's just got to get away from this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the ending of this is, I think it's a great finale.
Mm-hmm.
I think her getting stabbed is a nice turn.
Yep.
Because the way that they use the hand in this movie, excellent. Because
Yes.
they have that first great sequence, and then they use it in two very specific other places.
Yeah.
That make perfect sense.
And they give it enough time that you kind of forget that it's in play.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
and it's reasonable that you would because it's just a hand. Like it can go in the chaos, it can go hide.
Right.
So like,
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. But ending is good. I like the ending.
Quality audio
losing my
commentary.
train of thought a lot tonight. I think so. At the end of this movie, watching it now, I do think a lot about why this movie works and other horror comedies don't. And it is, again, it's just like this really fine line where you have to be willing to go over the top, but play it as though it is the most serious thing in the world.
Yes.
It's the same reason Ghostbusters works.
Yes.
Because it's a really silly thing that everybody takes very seriously.
Right. None of the characters are winking at the camera.
Right.
Like they're all, for them, this is all real. This is really happening.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they have to just deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the humor of the situation more than it is writing jokes. You know?
Right. Right.
And those
like
movies are
that.
fine too. Like Tucker and Dale versus Evil is really funny.
I gotta give that one another shot. I
Yeah.
remember trying to watch that, and I think I was just in the wrong headspace for
That's
it.
fair.
And was just like, meh, I don't really need this right now.
But that's one where if like you're going in expecting something like Evil Dead 2, you're going to be like, this is too much.
Yeah.
There's some sort of magic in the formula of this movie that is very difficult to replicate.
Yes.
The only other movie that I think comes close is like Reanimator.
Yeah,
Reanimator has
yeah.
the same kind of mix where it's like Herbert West, very funny. Herbert West, deadly serious.
Yes. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think that aspect of it is where a lot of the humor comes from, is like treating the absurd with the utmost sincerity.
Yes.
Like
yeah.
being 100% like buying into it and never having the characters make the joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like having Jeffrey Combs deliver dead seriously. Why would anybody listen to you? You're just a head in a jar.
Yeah.
It's like
Yes.
excellent.
Yes.
And so I think that's why I like this so much, is because it does have this tone that is so unique to this franchise. And there's lots of stuff that came after it that tried to kind of replicate it, but never quite does it right.
Yeah.
There's something about the mix of Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, and I guess Rob Tappert, he's always there, that they just have this thing that they do very well that they like that nobody else knows how to do. And I think that's why people who love this franchise so badly wanted more of it.
Yeah.
Because it is so unique and it is so
difficult to do
Yeah.
and replicate. Yeah. Yeah. No, I would totally agree. I think this movie has like a rare magic in terms of like the balance it hits. And yeah, I don't really know how you land on that other than having just like happening upon the right combination of elements. Because if you dial any of them up too far, it sort of turns into something else.
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily a bad something else, but it is different. It's not this same, like, this movie definitely still has its horror elements. No one would just say this is a straight up comedy.
Yeah.
But it is undeniably funny.
Yes.
At points.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bruce Campbell's face, man.
It's the best special effect they have. It's Bruce Campbell's face.
I just like the scene where he's standing in the living room by himself and he's laughing and everything else is laughing. It's just like one of my favorite.
Yeah, when he starts laughing and then it turns into him just screaming.
Yeah.
As he's losing his mind.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. That and when the eyeball flies into Bobby Joe's mouth.
Yes. I was watching this. I have the 4K disc. I think that they edited out you can see the string.
Yeah.
Because they shot it in reverse, right? So they pulled it out of her mouth.
Yep.
So usually you can see the string. I was looking for the string, and I think they might have digitally scrubbed it out.
Scrubbed it out a little bit.
Yeah. A lot of backwards acting in this.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
Yes.
The vine sequence is very fun.
Upgraded tree attack, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Do you feel like... Do you think that the upgraded effects and stuff in this are a benefit, or do you miss the stripped down version of the first one? Or are they different enough ultimately that you don't find it to be a negative?
I think they're different enough, and I think that the two movies are tonally different enough that you want them to have... You want those effects to focus on different things. Like, I think the first one is scarier.
Yes.
As a movie.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And I think the stripped down effects work better for that. I think they look scarier and they have a bigger impact because they are more finite. Like, they can do less, so they have to do more with less.
Right.
Whereas in this one, I think because the tone of the movie is so different and they're going so much bigger with everything and kind of doing that sort of, is this really happening? Or are the demons driving Ash insane? Or is Ash just losing his mind?
Right.
Having the bigger, kind of more bombastic effects works great for that kind of stuff of escalating everything to this like real point of absurdity.
Yeah.
So I think the two movies are doing different enough things that having those different styles benefits each of them. I think if you had this level of effects in the first one, I'd find the first one a lot less scary.
Yeah.
And that the movie wouldn't work as well for me.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think ultimately this one, the ending of this one, it's like where else do you go? You know?
Yeah, I kind of love that this one just like really just goes as big as it can at the very end. It's just like, well, we can't just have him walk out of the cabin again.
Yeah.
Like, we already did that. And also, after everything that's happened, we can't, like, he can't just go home.
Right.
Yeah. So what do we do with him instead? Well,
Yeah.
fuck it. Let's just send him back to Candaria.
And we will find out the fate of Ash Williams in the next installment. This is number 77 on our list. How do you feel about that placement? Too high, too low? Would you take it off the list?
I'd keep it on the list. I don't know if I'd put it that high.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not going to fight with anybody who wants to put it at 77.
Okay, then I guess I don't have to fight with you. I think 77 is a good place for it. I think there's other stuff that's lower than it that should be higher than it, but that's a different conversation.
Right. Yeah. If we're playing the where is the shining on this list game, then I would probably swap wherever those are.
Yes.
Yeah.
The music in this is done by Joe LaDuca again. I love the music in this movie.
Yeah, the
I
music
think
in this
it's
movie is great.
really good.
Yeah.
And he does Army of Darkness. Danny Elfman does some music for Army of Darkness, but I think Joe LaDuca does most of it. And does he do the show? I think he might do the show too. I can't remember, but he's a longtime Evil Dead compadre. I don't know. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn.
Is that like the official title?
Yes.
Okay.
Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn.
All right.
Dead by Dawn, Dead by Dawn.
Yep. I'll eat your soul.
If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/thepenskyfile, where you can follow Amanda and I as we go through the Halloween franchise. July, it's getting hot this month. And I think what everybody needs to cool down is a little H2O.
Hey.
So
there it is.
Follow us as we get into Halloween Water, the 7th installation of the Halloween franchise.
Join us while Clay slowly loses his patience.
Halloween H2O, a refreshing drink of water before things get bad.
A tall
again.
drink of water.
And we've covered Friday the 13th. We've covered Video Nasties last year. We've done the second string of Stephen King. There's plenty of stuff on there to check out. If you've already listened to all of our other episodes, and if you have, you are beautiful and insane. We appreciate both of those things.
Our favorite kind of person.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to do it for us. We will be back next time with Army of Darkness, which I'm so excited you haven't seen this movie and have no idea what happens in it.
I am terrified.
So I'm going to tell you, don't be terrified because it's not a scary movie.
No, I'm terrified because of you.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a good chance the podcast is just going to be me going like, so remember when that happened?
I thought you were going to say there's a good chance the podcast will end.
Well, that too. I mean, it's up to you.
Okay.
But thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Clay.
Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.